Hello, I am Madeline Orozco, and this is Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, my final project, and I did an individual case study. So, the central idea is an analysis of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and the implementation of domestic containment post-Cold War, resulting in the evolvement of gender roles and women's studies. So, a term that best relates to this conversation is containment, although more specifically, domestic containment and sexual containment will be used to describe the topics in this conversation. So, containment was a popular term of the 1940s, as it was a foreign policy strategy created just before the Cold War, which is relevant to this time in which the play was published and also performed on stage and on screen. Just to clarify, Williams is the name of the scholar I am in conversation with, not the Tennessee Williams. So Williams uses containment to describe the historical and social political context of Cat. So they use these cluster of terms to break down and analyze the story, themes, and characters. The first is domestic containment. So each member of the family would have to abide by its societal role. Domestic containment was popularized in the media and meant to provide a sense of belonging and structure during the Cold War era. And sexual containment was a way for society to contain women's sexuality, specifically how women expressed it or wanted it, because it was essential for women's desire for sex to never exceed that of her husband. So the idea of sexual containment was to bond women and sex to reproducing and enhancing family and togetherness. This is evident in that scene with Big Mama questioning Maggie about her sex life with Brick, assuming that responsibility onto Maggie. So in conversation, here we go. The struggle that is seen is not one single issue, but a near mirror reflection of uncertainties in the United States of 1955, from issues such as materialism, family, to sex and gender roles in a rapidly changing society. Many of these anxieties strike close to what it means to be a man, and while very few questions are answered, the play raises ideas that both support and resist a notion of a masculinity crisis that had once again come to the forefront of American ideals. And I thought this was a great excerpt from the article, as it describes the time in which Cat was released and performed, and it includes the discussion of topics such as gender roles, family, masculinity, femininity, motherhood, and sexuality, as its interpretation reflected that of the Cold War era. And here is the popular propaganda poster of that was popular during this time. And here is a picture of a model housewife, again reinforcing the idea of like domestic containment. And I'm also in conversation. Here's another bullet point. So at this time, popular media such as this play not only helped push these roles forced upon women, but also helped justify them with the idea of domestic and sexual containment. And Wiley describes common stereotypes of women in the media. So Maggie is the desirable woman, the woman as she has not become a mother. She is sexually alluring, holding on to this certain kind of sensual femininity. Whereas May, on the other hand, is the ideal woman in terms of domestic and sexual containment. She is a mom, a wife, and supportive to her husband. In the play, Maggie describes her as a monster of fertility, whereas Wiley describes her as the American ideal woman. She's not sexually alluring, so of course she's on the opposite side of the spectrum. So that is where these two women are different. They are two women that are on the opposite sides of female portrayal. And interestingly, May is the older version of both of these women, and we can see how she is treated by society, in the way that her husband interacts with her, and yet speaks of her when she's not there. But also she holds this kind of power in the household. Um, and Tennessee Williams not only presented masculine types, but used women's stereotypes that build on men's anxiety and uneasiness. And we see how women's roles ultimately revolve around the comfort of men. And call to action, why is this important? Well, although this play is many decades old, we still are facing similar issues with representation of women in the media and in politics. Although the image of women is not as it used to be, women are still having to fight the repercussions of patriarchal ideology, whether it's healthcare, job security, domestic violence, autonomy. The list goes on, and now we have the rise of these men's activists, or personalities, that have been pushing damaging ideas that reinforce these stereotypes. There's like a resurgence of supposed new ideas on women's roles, but they're really just unoriginal and repackaged sexism and misogyny. And it's so important to just look back at these kinds of messages that we saw in these plays, and also how it relates to today. So here are my references, and thank you.